I could hardly believe what was happening. Standing less than 2 feet away from me was a young woman, smiling calmly, dressed in a simple bra without a shirt. The garment was a slightly faded beige, sturdy and plainly made. Like the football jersey she had worn earlier, it did little to enhance her appearance, offering no particular sense of style or refinement. "What do you think?" she asked sincerely. I took a moment to consider my answer before replying honestly. "It's hard to say," I admitted. "Your bra is doing an excellent job of supporting you." I hesitated, then corrected myself with an awkward smile. "I mean, it offers great support, but it doesn't really highlight your shape the way it could." There was no hesitation, no coy pause or tilt of the head. She simply turned away from me, reached back, and unfastened the bra, placing it neatly atop the jersey on the bench behind her. When she turned back to face me, I could finally see what had been hidden before, and for a brief moment I found myself at a complete loss for words. I couldn't help the thought that flashed through my mind, wow. And they truly were impressive, larger than I had ever seen before, full and perfectly shaped, with a natural symmetry that immediately drew the eye. Everything about them seemed striking and unfamiliar to me, far beyond anything I had encountered in magazines or imagined before. For a brief moment, I could do nothing but stare, my thoughts racing in astonishment. I remember thinking, with a mix of surprise and awe, that this was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The impression stayed with me, clear and unforgettable, long after that instant had passed. I lingered a moment longer, tilting my head and shifting my angle slightly, trying to take in the scene from every possible perspective. I wanted to appreciate those impressive curves in their entirety, uninterrupted. A fleeting thought crossed my mind about the fine details, but I dismissed it just as quickly. I wasn't certain what was typical and had no intention of lingering on anything that might distract me from the view itself. "They are truly quite remarkable," I said, genuine admiration evident in my voice. I had never been so close to an uncovered figure before, and the sight was striking. I leaned forward slightly, moving with care, glancing at her expression until I was close enough that my eyes could no longer focus if I went any nearer. From that distance, the view was even more impressive, revealing details I hadn't noticed before. She watched my reaction for a while, clearly amused by my quiet amazement. Then, with a playful lilt in her voice, she asked, "Would you like to feel them for yourself?" I hesitated only a moment before answering honestly. "Yes, I would." She gently took my left hand and guided it forward, placing it carefully against her. My hand barely covered the space she offered, but she didn't seem to mind at all. Instead, she smiled softly. "Your hand is very warm," she said in a low voice. "I've been told that I'm a warm person," I replied, trying to sound calm despite how aware I suddenly felt of everything around me. "I imagine you are," she replied lightly. At the time, I didn't fully understand what she meant by that. Keeping her hand over mine, she gently guided my palm downward, applying a bit more pressure and subtly directing my fingers, as if encouraging me to become familiar with the moment. After a while, she slowly withdrew her hand, careful to ensure that I didn't hesitate or break the rhythm she had set. She promptly guided my other hand to rest against her opposite side, and I followed her lead, gently moving my hands in a way that seemed to please her, sensing that this was what she wanted. "That feels nice," she said softly, a slight tremor running through her as she continued. "Yes, very nice. Are you sure you've never done this before?" "Quite sure," I replied. "I'm certain I would remember experiencing something this pleasant." She leaned closer, her face hovering just an inch from mine, then gently closed her eyes and gave me my very first kiss from someone outside my family. I could immediately tell this moment was different. For one thing, the kiss lingered instead of ending quickly. For another, it carried a new sense of curiosity and warmth, as if she were inviting me to understand something entirely unfamiliar. By this point, I was completely out of my depth. I would like to say that I instantly recalled everything I had ever read about kissing and the finer points of a first real embrace, but that simply wasn't the case. My mind, instead, felt like a muddy swamp, thick, slow, and uncooperative, refusing to let even the smallest useful thought rise to the surface. All that knowledge I assumed I possessed was buried somewhere beneath the haze, inaccessible when I needed it most. Purely on instinct, I allowed my lips to part, and soon there was a gentle meeting between us that felt entirely new and unfamiliar. I tested the moment cautiously, exploring the rhythm of the kiss, but quickly learned there were unspoken boundaries I did not yet understand. Each time I advanced, she guided me back with quiet confidence, turning the exchange into a soft, playful back and forth. This subtle dance continued advance and retreat. Curiosity answered with restraint while I remained close to her, my hands resting where they seemed welcome, moving awkwardly but earnestly. Everything felt tentative and overwhelming at once, as though we were both learning the steps together, guided more by instinct than experience. I began to move my hands slowly, exploring with cautious curiosity, as though trying to understand unfamiliar terrain. Before long, I became aware of a firmer shape beneath my palms, and I applied a gentle upward pressure while my fingers continued their tentative movements. With deliberate care, I focused briefly on one sensitive point, rolling it lightly between my fingers and applying only the faintest pressure, mindful not to overstep the moment. She gently pulled away from the kiss and, with a hint of surprise in her voice, said, "That feels quite nice. Just apply a little more pressure, though." As she leaned back into the kiss, I followed her lead, and before long she let out a few quiet, breathless sounds that told me she was enjoying the moment. Encouraged, my free hand mirrored the first, my fingers exploring with the same gentle curiosity, light pressure, a careful touch, and a tentative, almost playful motion. Everything about the exchange felt tentative yet charged, guided more by instinct than experience. She broke our kiss for just a moment, her breath catching as she whispered, "Oh, that feels wonderful. Please don't stop." I had no intention of stopping as I continued to move my hands slowly, my palms exploring while my fingers traced small, deliberate circles. After a moment, I applied just a touch more pressure, enough to make her pause. When she hesitated, I immediately eased off, careful not to push too far. As soon as she resumed, I leaned in again, testing whether she might let me draw closer this time. Once more, she held her ground, allowing only so much before gently refusing. In response, I gave a brief, playful squeeze before returning to lighter, more restrained movements, letting the moment settle back into a quieter, teasing rhythm. "What?" she blurted out in surprise. The instant she opened her mouth to speak, I leaned in and stole a brief, impulsive kiss. For a moment she seemed taken aback, unsure of how to respond. I teased her playfully, then drew back just as quickly, returning to a gentler, more deliberate touch. My hands continued their careful, exploratory movements, this time with slightly firmer intent than before, as I watched for her reaction and adjusted to it. She shivered softly as my hands moved gently, clearly enjoying the attention. She broke the kiss and smiled warmly. "Would you like to kiss me here?" she asked, her voice light and teasing. "Yes," I replied earnestly. "I would like that very much, please and thank you." She laughed. "You certainly are polite. My mother always told me to be respectful to a lady." "A lady?" she repeated, amused. "Yes," I said simply. "A lady." She smiled broadly and said teasingly, "You're quite the charmer." Leaning back slightly, she gave me room to move closer. I shifted forward, facing her, and gently pressed a kiss against her. My movements were careful and tentative, guided more by instinct than experience. One hand continued its gentle, reassuring motion, as if it somehow knew exactly what to do, while I focused on the moment, aware of nothing else but her quiet approval and my own racing heartbeat. I gradually broadened my attention, moving my lips and tongue with eager curiosity across her skin. She gasped sharply. "Goodness," she exclaimed. "Where did you learn to do that?" "I read about it in a book," I replied. "A book?" she asked, clearly astonished. "Yes," I said simply. "A book."